My dad was a passionate guy, quite strong-minded and determined. I obviously saw that when he recovered from a stroke in 2011, where he just went from being in a hospital bed to grinding away at it, getting his independence back. Same as when I'm swimming, I suppose. It'll just have to be a kilometre at a time until I get home. It was just after Dad's stroke that I committed to try raise money for the Irish Heart Foundation's stroke awareness campaign. So I ran 35 marathons in 35 days. I remember going for breakfast with Dad to tell him about it, and he just laughed with surprise, and then, I suppose once he calmed down, he just asked how he could help. And he was always supportive like that. My dad died of cancer. It was just 3 weeks after being in hospital from getting diagnosed. It was a rough time for my family, of course. So I'm just trying to raise as much money as I can for charity and just do his memory proud. My name is Alan Corcoran, and I'm going to swim the length of Ireland. When I was doing the marathons, I sort of just threw caution to the wind and didn't put too much thought into it. Just having this relatively large concept and just going for it, really. Losing Dad was obviously hard for us all, and I wanted to do something to get me out of that sort of hard point in life and give myself something to work towards. I had a few pints with the friends and talked about different options. At the centre of it was being a fundraiser event, more difficult than the 35 marathons in 35 days. We sort of all came to a conclusion together that if I was to try swim the lap of Ireland, the chances of success were sort of down. The length of Ireland was hard enough, but not so hard that we were going to make a total balls of it, which we ultimately did.
Myself, my mother, my wife and daughter went up to attempt one from the Giant's Causeway, and we're down at the start. And I was sort of excited for him, because of all the work. This is the culmination of all that months and months of training. And I was pretty confident that he would finish the first attempt because of the amount of training that he did put in.
Giant's Causeway to Dunmore was the first challenge. Very minimal sea training. Was maybe a bit overly confident, but the second I jumped in off the Giant's Causeway and felt that North Sea, the seriousness of it sort of hit me in the face, as it were. I remember swimming out to the guys who were maybe 400 metres offshore and being absolutely knackered, just gasping for air, but not wanting to let them know because I didn't want to make them sort of more nervous than they already were on their first day, that thinking, Jesus, has he done any preparation?
You had company.
More seals?
Yeah.
I had 2 weeks of crew covered and thought that if I'd got far enough south that I'd get people up from the southeast, from the Dublin sailing clubs.
We made great progress in the first week or so, and he was flying down, and then just between the weather and it was only a small rib as well, so he couldn't go out in any sort of choppy weather at all.
Even though it was the summer, light was falling, the conditions weren't great. Concerns had been raised by members of the public about an overdue swimmer and their support vessel, and immediately I knew it was Alan. Alan was located within half an hour just south of Newcastle, so we got him on board and we towed the boat back to safety. I think he was a wee bit embarrassed. He's a very determined man and he wanted to complete the swim.
The nail in the coffin of the first challenge was the boat sinking. I'd been struggling for maybe 2 weeks at that stage to get crew, but once I had the boat, I said I'll just have to keep sort of sitting it out and waiting for people to hop in and hop out, and we'll keep going. But then once the boat was gone, you're going, well, I don't have the boat now and I don't have crew, so.
He said himself in the first attempt that he was going to finish it in 6 weeks. After a couple of weeks, that became evident that that just wasn't possible at all.
Despite the best of training, a fantastic team around you and a great support vessel or vessels, things can still go wrong at sea. On average, the RNLI helps 3 people a day. Last year alone, we launched approximately 950 times across the island of Ireland. Anyone who is contemplating or training for an endurance swim should always notify the Coast Guard of their intended track, their support vessel's call sign and their name, and times they intend to arrive at each point in their course. Despite various attempts by Alan and his team and also a couple of local people from the harbour, some of the problems were starting to mount.
When your boat is capsized, you don't see that there's a way forward. He tried for a couple of days, but you're more reliant on other people, and that's where it's not just you and your physical determination, which he has in buckets.
I actually got onto a local fisherman's boat and managed to actually get another swim in. But even with that, you're going, how far can I realistically get? Every additional day I could swim was more time that you can put up a post and ask for donations, trying to keep it going, keep the show on the road for as long as you could. I was just sort of sat in a B&B on my own for a few days, and it just went, when you don't have the boat, you don't have the crew, just time to pack it in. So it was a bit of a lonely bus home from Northern Ireland back down to Waterford.
He was just so disappointed and gutted, really. He expected that he would finish it, and he was very down after that, but like, we were just trying to cheer him up a bit, like that he still raised so much money for two worthy charities.
Straight away after the first attempt, I just sort of drew a line under it, and it ultimately wasn't to be. I was sort of content in that being a loss on the record and just going back to normal life, as it were. I think I had maybe 2 weeks off or so after the first attempt, and then back to the desk job in London. It's a bit surreal going back to an office after doing a challenge like that. It's dull and monotonous then when you go back to a desk job. You oddly get used to the chaos of it all and being in a wetsuit to the point where being in a shirt and trousers, it just feels a bit alien. The catalyst for the second challenge was an interview I did with a local radio station. They were doing a documentary on sea swimming, and I was asked, what did you learn from the first attempt and would you do it again? I didn't have a proper answer for what I'd learned from the first attempt, and I'd said I would do it again without any sort of thought. After putting in so much time and effort into it, I think it's a bit stupid not to have sat down and thought about what went wrong and if I could rectify it. When I did take the time after that interview, I didn't think it was down to my lack of swimming ability or ability to sort of endure the conditions. It was just more down to tweaks in the planning.
I could feel that it was always unfinished in his head. Going back to his run, there was a lot of things not in place a week out, but it all fell in place, and you become a little bit, you know, I've managed to solve this, I'm a problem solver, so I'll solve this next problem. And I think he might have rested on that a little bit.
Now it just sort of consumed my thoughts to a point of just wanting to just commit to it. And once I've committed, that's sort of that, just have to follow through with it. I'm not quite sure what time I told Caroline I was going to do it. It wasn't too much of a shock to her that I wanted to do it again. I think there's always sort of something maybe on my mind, and that's just sort of maybe part of who I am, or part of who I am now in my 20s anyway, that just wanting to go after a bit of excitement and adventure. She was looking to do a NOLS course, which is like an adventure course around the world. It was sort of like a 2-week hike thing, 2-week kayaking kind of thing. Ultimately she couldn't afford it, and then a few months later I sort of got the idea, well, if you wanted to do a kayak adventure, I've got the one for you.
So excited!
We're here at the Royal Docklands in London, and we're going to have our first attempt at swimming together as a team, so hopefully we won't kill each other in the water. And my support,
crossed,
my
yeah.
lovely support kayaker here.
If she said no, I would have had to get another person that would have kayaked, and I think it would have been fairly impossible to get somebody that would stay the course of the challenge. She sort of hopped on board straight away without too much thought.
First session down on the water together. Went really well, and no arguments. Okay, one argument, but it'll be fine.
Have to improve our logistics, that's all.
What logistics?
I can't hit you in the water.
I had done enough training on the first challenge, so I spent a lot of time trying to get sponsorship to try help with the cost of all of it, and looked into the courses involved to try up the safety element and improve the logistics. On the second attempt, I was confident in the training plan that I had from the first attempt, so the map was drawn. I just had to follow and do what I was told on the piece of paper, so that was just getting into the pool as often as I could, really. But there was also the aspect of the cold, which I had learnt a hard lesson on the first challenge. Swimming in a pool is a different kettle of fish compared to swimming in the sea.
Hi Heather.
Nice to meet you.
Hi there, it's Carolina.
Hi, lovely to meet you.
Support group.
Come this way.
I'd popped into Portsmouth University to get some expert advice there and get chucked into a cold tank. My stomach was a wreck. I was extremely nervous because it was 2 years since being in a cold tank.
When you're initially immersed in cold water, what happens is you get a big reduction in skin temperature, which stimulates an increase in heart rate, an increase in breathing rate, and also an increase in blood pressure. And so what we need to do to ensure Alan is okay is to make sure that he is well adapted to that cold shock response. And he does that by repeatedly going into cold water and dulling down that breathing, hyperventilation, and by that way he should be able to get in and out of the water more easily.
I was expected to swim for 45 odd minutes and I just about got up to that sort of time in a pool. That was a panic sort of stations moment. Flashbacks of the first challenge of having the air just taken from you and the panic of it and trying to deal with that in your head and trying to relax and trying to just sort of say you've been through this before.
If you try and swim while you're experiencing the cold shock response, you're likely to fatigue very rapidly. If you're swimming, you need a controlled breathing pattern, which cold shock response doesn't provide. And so Alan needs to make sure that he spends a couple of minutes getting rid of that elevated heart rate and breathing pattern so that he can control his breathing before starting to swim.
Subsequent from that then, I was ending up getting into the Serpentine Lake in London. Just trying to get rid of the cold shock response. The pain is beginning to sort of kick in now in the hands. So once a week I have to do this, twice if I can, to try make those first few weeks of the swim a bit easier on the system and a bit more comfortable. Portsmouth was maybe set at around 10, 12 degrees. The Serpentine was maybe 4 or 5 degrees, so that was certainly a shock to the system. Once you'd survived that, you felt that bit stronger then getting into the Irish Sea during the summer.
You look like a lobster.
The main lesson obviously from the first attempt was getting the support boat, so I knew I had to get something bigger. And that came with a big bill. So that sort of got the ball rolling on trying for a sponsor. Ultimately they all said no, which left me with the only option if I wanted to do this and if I was serious about this was to go for a bank loan. I had been following Fiona Quinn on Instagram, who was doing a paddleboard challenge, Land's End to John O'Groats, which is basically the length of Britain, and she had a 32-foot sailboat. So I just got in touch with her on Instagram. She was looking to sell her sailing boat and I was looking to buy it, so it was obviously a tried and tested adventure boat. I had luckily and thankfully got New Ross and Wexford County Council to sponsor a mooring, which left me with the challenge of how it affect not being a sailor. Do I get this sailboat from Bristol in the UK across the Irish Sea and into New Ross? I'd got in touch with Tim from the first challenge to see if he'd be willing to take it across the Irish Sea with me, and he roped in one of his friends, Mark. Quite excited, never been on a sailboat before. Not only that, but I get to spend the next sort of 48 hours getting it across to New Ross Harbour. It didn't go to plan. 15-foot wave, so it's an experience for a first sailing trip, to say the least. 35 hours and we had to bail and abort and pull into Wales. We had to leave it for, I think it was another maybe month in Wales, and then that left me with having to hire somebody from Ireland then to get a ferry across and then ultimately take it across to New Ross. So an expensive and steep learning curve with owning a sailboat.
I'm Alan Corcoran, and this June I'm going to be swimming the length of Ireland in aid of the Irish Heart Foundation and the Solace Cancer Support Centre. I'd sort of given up on trying to get sponsors, but AIR came on board as a major sponsor months later. My boss knew when I told him that I was going to do it. I'd shown him actually the video of the AIR ad and just sort of, he was confused looking at it going, what's this about? And I
just said, I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm just going to have to give you my notice that this is something that I feel I need to go back and do. And he just laughed. he was just sort of a bit taken aback by it, but also sort of knew that's my character and my determination in wanting to do this. Leaving the office was the start of the adventure, the challenge. It was grand living with Mum. I think she's always happy to have me company back home. And she was happy to give me the car to go train and doing everything she could and making sure that I had what I needed to have in place. Obviously she has that fear, but she's going to support me in the end.
I have my tow float, so I can store my phone and the personal locator beacon app. So there's no stone unturned this time in terms of safety, so that's a sort of an essential piece of kit which I didn't have the first time. So my mother's a bit happier now.
It was sort of full time then swimming, 4 weeks off before the challenge. So that was sort of squeaky bum time. I certainly felt more confident having done safety courses and sailing courses, knowing what things were this time around. Even being able to use a VHF if I needed and having sort of personal locator beacon if you got lost. It had made me appreciate maybe more the risks that were involved in the first attempt and the lack of safety preparation that I really had.
About a month or two out, Alan decided, right, well, I better get in the water at night. So I said, grand, I have a kayak, I'll come with you. It was my first time on the water in pitch dark. We had gone between Councillor Strand and the harbour in Dunmore. So you could see the two locations, but you couldn't see anything in between. And what was a little unnerving about that is as a trawler roared out of the harbour, well, you're like, if I can't see anything, they can't see me. I'd say it was a little bit easier in the water because you're generally not looking where you're going when you're sea swimming, especially when you have a kayak beside you, like in the middle of the sea where you can't see land, or you're 4 or 5 kilometres out, or it's at night. It really makes no difference. It was maybe a little bit easier for him being oblivious to what was going on above the water.
How was it?
Oh, dark.
Cold and dark? That's the kayak.
I'm proud of this one. Custom flag for the boat. Up to Daisha.
After getting all the pieces of equipment home and seeing it all laid out, and you're going, Jesus, I didn't really have any of this on the first challenge.
Fire extinguishers, flares, foghorns, essential toilet cleaner, anti-jellyfish factor 50.
The milestone was certainly going through all the pieces and making sure I had everything that I sort of had on my checklist. And then it was just a matter of, just get it on the boat.
Loading up the kayak today, getting it on the sailboat, and I have 3 sailors coming down now to sail it up to Ballycastle. So this is the main cabin here, and I'm stood at the furthest most point, so it just shows how tight things are. And here is the chart table, little bench there, and the radio and electrics and stuff here. We've got a little toilet here and sink, no shower, so that's going to be an interesting one, especially when you're coming out of a pissy wetsuit. We've got a double bedroom here apparently. Here is our kitchen space, and this is where me and Caroline are going to be stuck. I think it's going to be so cramped it might be an incentive to get in swimming a bit more now that I know that this is where I'm going to be getting my rest. It's not going to be in a B&B or a hotel, it's going to be on this moving cramped sailboat.
I had John, who had actually sailed the boat over from Wales to Ireland, got involved again to sail it up from New Ross up to Ballycastle. So they had spent, I think, 4 days, sort of nearly 24/7, getting it up to the north.
Wasn't without struggle. She got stuck in the muck, so we had to give her a bit of a push, but finally gone. So now I have a week more at home, and then on Saturday then I'll head up and meet Caroline in the airport. It's my last full day at home today before making my
2-day transport up to Ballycastle. I'm still coughing like mad, which is a bit shite, but I've got 2 weeks to shake it off. I haven't even started yet, and I'm already putting the steps in place to invite people to swim the last day with me. If anything, it's probably going to give me a big incentive to want to get home that bit more and have this big event, because it's going to raise around €4,000 for the Irish Heart Foundation and the Solace Cancer Support Centre if everyone signs up into the 300 places. So we arrived last night to the boat. We had our first night's sleep, which is shite, but that was the point in coming up to the boat a week beforehand, that we can try get used to the confined space, get used to the noises on the boat and the movement of it at night.
Third or fourth day on the boat after arriving to Ireland, and I'm not feeling too well. Feeling actually pretty shit. Am I allowed to say shit? I feel like I've got a flu, my joints are aching so much. I've got a massive headache, my teeth hurt a lot.
You'll be ready for the start of the swim in 2 days, 3 days?
I don't think I'll be ready, but I gotta do it. So I don't really have a choice.
My parents always encouraged me into sport from, I think, the age of 5. I was swimming between maybe 5 and 10, and athletics then. When I was around 6, Dad took me out to Tramore Football Club, where I played for 10 years. So training and sports has been a major part of my life. I was an attempted sprinter, but didn't make the cut sort of as I progressed into junior and senior level. But I was always good, I felt, at just trying and pushing myself, like puking up, and I was always good at showing up and putting in the work. Just didn't make the grade speed-wise. A challenge like this, speed isn't essential, it's just being a bit gritty and determined and stubborn. I suppose it started with me, with my dad dying. So it's just been something to focus and work towards since then. And it's been positive focus for me the last sort of 2-3 years. So it'd be a huge thing if I can finish it and do what I said I would do, and hopefully raise a lot of money for the Solace Centre and the Irish Heart Foundation. My dad had the stroke, which was the catalyst for doing the marathons, and then obviously with cancer, so being able to fundraise for those charities, it means a lot. It means a lot more than just doing the swim. The swim is starting tomorrow. In my head, I just want to jump in.
It means a lot for me, considering it's his second attempt, and I really wanted to do my best to help him achieve it, because I know it means a lot to him for many different reasons.
Should we go home to Watford now, will it?
I sort of made a note to myself to enjoy it as much as I could. I think it was a lot more emotionally fueled the first time around. It was a lot more raw, and there was a lot more fear. It was literally up until being on the Giant's Causeway that you could nearly just take a breath.
See you in a bit, man.
The logistics is done, and you can actually just sort of take a moment to take it all in before jumping in. It was amazing swimming out to Carolina. we just sort of took a moment and waved back to everyone and just sort of had that moment between us of just sort of smiling and saying, we're actually doing this now. I suppose she hadn't much sea experience prior to that either. She'd done all her prep in the Docklands in London, so we got her onto the sea a little bit the week before, but I'm sure she had that excitement too of saying, Christ, we're actually out into deep water now, and this is what we're going to be at for the next few weeks. It was fine for the first hour, it felt really great, and then sort of panicked a little bit with the coldness. But again, it was just sort of putting my mind at ease and telling myself I had been there before and I'd survived, so it was just sort of get on with it.
He's swimming a bit too much that way, is one thing as well. What are you doing that?
It wasn't until I'd looked at the tracker that I was like, shit, what happened there? I had in my mind that everything on this attempt was to be better than the first attempt, but we had made a third of the distance that I'd made on day one of the first attempt, but I had swam for an extra hour. We had just timed the tides wrong. There's no point swimming against the tide up here, it's so strong you're going to go nowhere, and that's sort of what happened. We're all a bit frustrated, but I'm hopeful for the lessons learned. Just seeing Chris and Noel working to figure out how do we correct this, I really felt I was in capable hands.
Weather forecasters coming on. Just left some lesson out. Listen to that one, yeah.
So day two, Chris and Noel asked me up to the deck and sort of looked out at the waves and sort of looked back at me and said, have you ever swam in anything like this? And I was like, nope. And I said, are you going to give it a go? And I was like, well, we've come this far, so yeah, let's go for it.
That's a serious coastal squall now there. So if we do nothing else except float, we should see 9. So
floating I can do.
The wind is due to come up much later to a not nice situation.
If you want to leave it a wee while, you should be getting more speed.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
That's it
It's up
tight
to you, though.
Yeah, that's it tight for how long? 15?
Half an hour maybe. But if you've got 2, I mean 2 is 2.
One for me, the safety of the boat as well, and my crew.
Split the difference and do 10 minutes.
Split the difference, give it 10 minutes and then roll.
Because day one had sort of not gone to plan, we felt we sort of had to give it a go somewhat on day two. We didn't have Caroline on the water, the conditions didn't allow for it, it wasn't sensible to put her onto a kayak.
So, yeah. I think, how far do you think you could see us? You know, maybe, you know...
It's with the waves chopping up, I probably won't have much visibility on you. I'll be able to see that lovely waterfall flag up there. That was...
Yeah, the best thing to do is if you go too far ahead and you're not comfortable, just put your hands
up.
No,
I'll be comfortable, grand, yeah. Off here then, yep. Okay, guys, see you later.
Okay, we'll see you in a while. Thanks a lot.
Stay safe.
Carolina, you're the spotter right now, okay? So you're the one watching him for a few minutes, and then we'll all take turns then.
Most of the bulk of my training was done in a pool, so then when you're getting clobbered by waves, it is that greatly more demanding on the body, and it's just something you can't really prepare for until you're in it. Talk about sort of being present in the moment, you can't really sort of focus on much else than just getting your breath and following that boat and making sure that you're not getting lost.
Right. How are you feeling? So you're travelling on about, I'd say, close to 2.5 to 3 knots at the minute. Feels like it's getting faster as well. Great shot.
Doing great.
Thanks, guys.
Waves are coming right in his face.
All right. Just for a talk. Here.
We're getting sucked out somewhere, aren't we? Yeah, we've gone too far out.
It's just we're just getting pushed and pushed and pushed to the tide. and the wind. Do you want to get towed? It's up to you what you want to do now. If you want to carry on.
So we're going to push out the rattling.
Yeah. We're not getting anywhere now.
You're getting loads. You just look at this, you know, you've come nearly as far as you did the whole 4 hours yesterday. But we have to go that way. From now. It's not too dangerous, it's perfect. You're covering lots of miles. Well, I'd have taken the tow, but he's there, damn determined, fair play.
He's swimming.
Man, we're doing some amount of knots, I tell you, even if it is in the wrong direction. Big winds now. No, that's the gale that they said is coming in now. It's in. The only thing is he's really getting a lot of miles. You know, so there is a case to be made for keeping him going. But look at that squally sky, look.
Yeah. Don't look like
doesn't look nice.
Like the look of that.
There was really ominous clouds and sort of storm coming in. We were sort of getting the warnings across on the radio, so we had to cut the swim short and bail off to Rathlin Island.
I'm going to make the call and I'm going to take him in out of the water.
That was a surprise to me, I think, as it was to everyone else, but it just would have been too dangerous really to get across back to Ballycastle where we had intended to pull into.
Cheers, thanks guys. Well done. You're some man for going out on that, I tell you.
But that was a wild experience, swimming through the Rathlin Sound in those conditions, and it was oddly enjoyable because you're sort of going, when else is anyone else really going to be swimming in this? If you're swimming a channel swim, you're not going to get into conditions like this. You wouldn't start it because it would scupper your attempt. So it was quite a unique sort of thing to be in those wild waves that probably a sensible person shouldn't be swimming in, but having the confidence in the crew to get you out if things did go wrong.
Very slip. Come on to this outer pontoon.
Yeah.
We'll be grand. We'll be going on to it. Okay, it's just going to get bouncy for a second while I come around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild today. We're now rattling around Rathlin Island with the wind blowing a gale out there, literally. Day 3 then, we were spot on the money with our start time. We got spat out of Rathlin Sound. Didn't have the big choppy overfalls that we got the first time around, so I thought we were in the clear. And I just stopped to tell Carolina, or say to Carolina, that this is actually quite great now, like we're heading south. And then no sooner had I said that, I got clobbered over the head with the crest of a wave, which I sort of thought was quite unusual in open water. So I popped the head up quickly and looked for Carolina, and then I just saw a wave take her just go like 5-10 metres away. Just high waves all around us. We were just stuck in a section of overfall, so I could just see Chris going, Goodo, going south, south. So Carolina started paddling. So I was like, right, that's the sign, goggles on, and we just gave it welly for 10 minutes, or thereabouts, and got out of it. Carolina did an amazing job. I was really impressed with how she coped with it. Also, Noel and Chris couldn't have been happier with their reaction. They got over to us, they just gave us a clear instruction, put the head down and you'll get out of it in 10 minutes. So that's what we did. It was the craziest conditions I've ever swam in, and hopefully we won't get that again. But a massive day as well, 30 plus kilometres.
We are doing 0 knots through the water, but we're doing 4.7 knots over the ground because that's the speed the tide's going at. It's absolutely screaming along, and it's really helping them get flying. So yes, Bob, this is some crack.
Last week I just felt like I was drowning somewhat gracefully amongst the waves, and then today just felt like swimming. Carolina was loving it as well, the sun was shining into Donegadee now to finish off a good week.
Today's swim is being aborted. Bumpy conditions and we're not feeling the sharpest, to say the least. We're getting a few waves over the top. Hopefully we'll be into Portavogie soon. Highs and lows of this shit.
The crew tells you in the morning it's going to be really sunny and nice and you're going to love it today. 2 hours in, it just gets really windy and suddenly you're just getting blown away and you're hating your life and questioning your choices that you made in the past.
Aim to the end. Aim to the furthest point of land you can see. Okay?
The fatigue of everything was sort of building up. Bit of a falling out with Carolina, just in terms of who should be following who and what happens if we get split up. It got frustrating, and it's not a place to be having a discussion or an argument, because once you stop, you're freezing.
My sort of mindset nearly switched from being like boyfriend, girlfriend, but then once we started I was sort of, I need to focus on the swimming and recovery and publicising the event, documenting the event, which I think she sort of found that dynamic hard, that maybe I was a bit cold because I had just all that going on.
It gets miserable, especially when it's really rainy and windy, and it's just like looking after Alan, who's sometimes fairly annoyed and tired and hungry.
It was difficult, certainly, to try balance up being romantic partners and then being nearly business partners in the challenge that we had.
And then there was only 2. We're on our own, waiting for sailors, hopefully. Currently walking to the start point of our swim to try and make up for the lack of volunteers, so we're going off the land and back onto land.
We've just finished a 2-hour swim without the sailboat.
This feels more dangerous than the swimming. People swinging bloody balls left, right and centre, and I'm just strolling across the course. Has there been a stranger sight on a golf course? The wetsuit man. Find me way off this shagging golf course, been on it for the last 20 minutes or so, trying to get home, trying to get back to the boat.
Me and Carolina got 7 kilometres done on our own yesterday without a sailboat, but it's not sustainable. You just can't do it with cliff sections and across big bays.
Welcome back, good to have you back on board. We're not meant to be here.
So the guys stepped in on short notice, giving up more of their time, salvaging week 3. Absolutely delighted they came, and progress. We're swimming 4 hours, so it's good to get that back on the board and back moving again. Loads of cause for celebration today. I've managed to surpass my 2017 attempt, so which is a huge moment for myself, and even more proud of Carolina, who's after getting her exam results for her final year first class degree in neuroscience. So enjoy the highs after we've got through some of the lows. Still here in Ardglass. We had a lovely night up in the Mourne Mountains last night, thanks to Chris. Didn't all go to plan. I was unfortunate enough to fall down a fucking stairs like an idiot. Not even an ounce of alcohol to take the credit for it. Just me being tired and half asleep in the middle of the night. Coming out one of those ceiling sort of ladders, missed my footing and cracked my shin and cut my finger and shin open a bit. Extremely painful, but it doesn't seem as bad today, and hopefully the wounds will heal up a bit, but probably not the best environment in the wetsuit for open cuts, especially with peeing in it. Gavin Tim arrived there Monday night, cracked straight into work up in Ardglass Marina, had the charts out on the table. We're into this area of slack water, so the tide is moving down from the south at the same time as the tide is moving up from the north, which just creates this slack area of water where there's no tide pushing me in either which direction. So it's really the donkey work where I have to just work my balls off for every mile. On the first day out with the guys yesterday, we moved from Ardglass Marina into Carlingford Lough. It was quite evasive on the first challenge, so to make it here eventually is just it's just fantastic. South Carlingford Lough, south of Dundalk, off the coast of the Republic of Ireland now, so I'm absolutely delighted with that.
Hey! To the Republic.
The routine was very much based around tides and where the tides are flowing in what direction. So you have to jump in when the tide is flowing south in Alan's case. And that all changes around Dublin as well, so you have to completely reorientate. You can't just add an hour every day, you have to rethink your schedule again.
Ooh, day 28 is aborted. It's just not safe enough to get that kayak on and off. 2 to 3 metre swell. And as well, it's just too windy for the guys to keep any sort of course, and it'd be miserable for them in trying to bob around in this for 4 hours. They'd have to keep circling to try stick with me. They couldn't go near me because this could easily get bashed in on top of me.
This looks properly scary.
Yeah, probably not the best kayaking condition.
Ready, go.
For me, the main real danger was the boat in those wavy, stormy conditions. I still have to get onto a boat, you're a man overboard, and if it comes down on you, you're in trouble. You don't want to get hit by a boat in the head, like that's game over.
Seeing the cries for volunteers and just having an absolute love for the water, jumped at the opportunity, done my powerboat licence, so I could help him. It's very important that you look after everything you can for him. He needs to just get up, swim, eat, go to bed. Even when he comes in out of the water, there's nearly a full day's work to be done for the crew. You're looking for people to give up their free time, and they have to have a particular set of skills.
Swim number 29 just on there now, another 4 hours clocked up on the board, and we're just in line with the south point of Dundalk Bay. Beautiful flat calm conditions today. The nicest conditions we've had so far. I think stark contrast to the waves we had yesterday, which were probably the biggest waves we've had so far.
We're aiming for here. If we're going to get our westerly, we're going to be aiming kind of towards shore so we can drift the whole way down,
We're just south of Dundalk Bay now, and the plan is to get down to Dublin. We have Kieran and Jonathan coming to help for the week. We're going to put the head down and just take advantage of being back into tides and moving. Today we also had loads of lion's mane jellyfish, some other funky looking dangerous jellyfish with big stingers, some purple looking jellyfish, and then those sort of more common Casper the Ghost sort of looking ones that I've swam straight into loads of times. I think I maybe hit 7 jellyfish today or more. I don't like anything touching me in the water.
It's stressing. Oh no! Just calling them. Let them know we're here,
Yeah.
Pop that back in.
Just a quiet night here in Clogherhead.
Day 34 and so to Dublin.
Getting to Dublin was monumental. I'd always felt, even on the first challenge, if I got to Dublin, and then more so on the second challenge, that once I got there, I'm definitely getting home.
Break some records.
You're how many hundreds of kilometres away from home, but to me, you're on the homeward stretch.
I think I got stung in the face. I felt something on the I saw the big jellyfish on the arm when I was stroking down. Got my head up. I think I got a little bit. But grand. Not as bad as falling down the stairs.
Host Marina. This is unsinkable 2, unsinkable 2, unsinkable 2, over.
Week 5.
Cheers! We're just being held up here in Dublin Bay. We've got the Dublin pilot boat out behind us there. We had a close call with a ferry.
I hadn't necessarily rang Dublin Port to inform them I was swimming across the bay. There was a worry for me when I saw the pilot boat out there that they might have told me just to get out of the water, or you're not allowed to go across here. Luckily they were very accommodating. I just sort of stayed put and watched this thing just steamroll by. It came from being a dot to being a very big boat in the space of around 2 minutes. There was no getting out of the way of that if you were anywhere near it. It was a mad scenario, a bit of a surreal one. I remember just laughing with Carolina, sort of like, what the f*** are we after getting ourselves into here?
We're out of Dublin now, another county ticked off, and we're well on our way through Wicklow. Time to push things on now and get this challenge done. Longest swim done yet,
4.5 hours and we are just outside Greystones.
We're edging closer to Waterford. I'm running out of days to make sure I make it to the finale, which I had announced the week earlier. There's people registering to swim, so the pressure is on. If something goes wrong, we mightn't make it, and then there's all the crack around the insurance and people coming out for the event, and I don't want to disappoint them.
Alan was anchored off a small harbour just down from Rosslare Europort. So the only way to get to him was by sea. So I paddled out to him about 6 a.m. We got the boat filled with diesel and headed off for the day.
Gavin came in that day and allowed us to get far enough south to give Carolina a point that she can get access to the sea off a safe entry point. Then we were just really trying to scrabble together somewhere to stay where we could keep the kayak that was near. The closest place we could get was maybe a mile from the beach, which then created another problem. You're going, Christ, how am I going to get all the gear and the kayak if we don't have a car? The boat is miles away in Kilmore Quay.
We're down on Carn Beach in Wexford. We were about to carry all our equipment and kayak down. Our Airbnb host then pulled into the driveway and said he'd give us a lift down with us, so that was fantastic. It saved us hauling the things for a kilometre. Just about to get into the water and go around Carnsore Point to become the first ever Czech lady, well, we think, we don't know,
Yeah.
I'd assume so, to kayak the length of Ireland, and I'll finally swim the length of Ireland. And then we start heading west, just because I'm a bit of a romantic, wanted to swim home, so the challenge isn't done at the length of Ireland. I have another 3 or 4 swims to get home to Tramore, where I'm hoping we'll have a good turnout for the finale.
We got Carolina, some woman for one woman up over, the first Czech person, we think, to kayak the length of Ireland. And Alan Corcoran, the first person to swim the length of Ireland. Up your bio, yeah. Baby, we did it. Carnsore Point behind us.
Pretty epic moment to share with Carolina.
I'm so proud of you.
We took a few minutes, took it in, enjoyed it, celebrated, and then it was like, right, we have to get to Tramore for next Sunday, because I just after announcing the swim yesterday for next Sunday at 6 p.m. in Tramore.
And we are now on the way to the nearest vehicular access point to try meet my mum, who's going to take the kayak down to Kilmore Quay, where the boat is at the moment.
Just from the length of Ireland.
Hello!
A large part of the problem on the final week was that we didn't have a specified 2-member crew, so it was just trying to piece people in as we went.
Once you get involved in these challenges, you nearly feel responsible. I've got him this far, let's get him home. I had work commitments, managed to get out of him again by the Wednesday. So we were pushing for home, maybe out in conditions that were a little bit rough to have the boat, the kayak and the swimmer. Either one would be fine, but to have all 3 and keeping them together was a challenge.
Shit got really serious really quick on that one. I just got into the water, just started to get the trackers going at Salty Islands, and Carolina was on the kayak. Then I looked back and she got flipped over somehow, so she was in the water.
The waves were just humongous and took nearly, I'd say, 15 minutes to fish me out of the water, because it was just really tough, both for the sailors and for me, because I was just having my first cold water shock, so that was interesting.
Today is Wednesday, I'm supposed to be in Tramore for Sunday, so I guess it's these deadlines that I set myself that possibly put ourselves into that situation.
I was pissed off that we didn't get that swim in, and you're going, well, now we're not going to make it, we needed that swim to get completed. But then you're going, that could have been fatal, really. So you just have to bring it back to that. There's more important things than finishing the challenge, and that's always finishing the challenge alive, essentially.
See you, guys. Yeah, best of luck. Thanks for coming down, yeah. Best of luck.
The fear was sort of subsiding a bit, and Gavin was just gung-ho as ever to say, what can I do to help? He paddled out of the marina. I climbed down the marina wall and we went from there. We still managed to rescue a few hours of swimming that day, although we were getting absolutely hammered along the beach.
Let's turn in the rubber
torture. The waves have meant there's no more sand left to go on, so I'm hobbling across all these stupid stones to get back to the beach.
It was risky, it was unpleasant, it was wild, probably stupid, but we just wanted to make the finish line. For that last week, there were so many moments where we felt the challenge is gone. We were just getting more and more errors and more scary situations as we got closer.
I'd say the final week is probably the most difficult one for me, because as the end of the swim's approaching, I feel there's quite a lot of pressure both on Alan and me to sort of support him as much as I can.
Later between southwest and northwest, force 6 to 7, possibly touching gale force 8 along the southwest coast.
We've got gusts of 30 knots forecast for Friday. I've got the same then, gusts of up to 30 knots on Sunday. It's looking like the swim could be called off if it's 30 knot winds. They're coming from the south, which means it's blowing directly into Tramore Bay.
There was no point throwing in the towel at that stage though, because we felt we were doing just enough that we might actually get away with this. That's sort of what it was at there, that yeah, it was coming down to kilometres or to minutes nearly, that yeah, just that the finish line was getting that close.
We're on our way to Hookhead, which is the start point, and we're trying to still make Tramore, and then possibly another few hours then at 2 p.m. to try and keep going to the finish line. Just looking forward to getting finished now. Absolutely exhausted. Last night of this shitty boat. Oh.
Six hours. Longest sea swim ever.
I think I would have really panicked on the first challenge, getting into the water at night time, but I felt hardened from the whole challenge and from how far I had made it at that point. So it nearly didn't affect me getting into the dark and the cold. It was just like, I need to do this.
We got to the final day. The boat had made it to Dunmore. Alan was just around the corner, final bit of swimming. The original plan was to have 100 swimmers or more swim back in with Alan for the last 400 metres. So they were going to go out, meet him at a buoy, everyone swim in together.
Just en route to the finale now. Unfortunately, Carolina couldn't stay on the boat because it's going to be up to, I think, a force 8. She's gone by land to join the other safety kayakers from the pier in Tramore, and I'll have to swim the last little leg to Tramore on my own, and just hoping nothing goes tits up.
We had just about made it, or so I thought by the skin of my teeth. Just about got that progress where the finish line was within reach.
Made it all of 5 minutes out of Dunmore East Harbour towards the last mile, 2 miles, maybe an hour's worth of swimming, and the sailors called it off. There was a lifeboat towing in another sailboat and big waves, and the 2 sailors didn't like the look of it, and ultimately like, they're going to be responsible if something goes wrong with me, so that's just the way it is. It's the only big question mark on whether even tonight's 100 swimmers can get in the water if I'm not getting in the water. Bit of a disaster. I don't know what's going to happen.
At that point then it was sort of damage control, damage limitation. The insurance was paid up, the guys were out after having people signed up, registered. The day was going ahead. At that point then it was just, what can we salvage from the day?
We're just on the way to the finale swim. Not the way we want it to be, we're driving, as you can see. Which means I have to go back and do the last mile or 2 or whatever I've left to do someday later in the week.
We went out to Tramore, I had a look down at the beach, the red flag was up, and it was just all sort of unravelling as the day went on and we were running out of time.
With red flags gusting 32 knots, nobody wanted to take responsibility for that, which is fair enough. So we've no safety kayakers or support boats at this stage, and obviously the red flag means lifeguards don't want anyone in the water either, so I just have to cancel the swim, the public aspect of it. I told people I'd be there for 6 o'clock, so I'm just heading in on my own now from the pier over to the lifeguard hut. Right, see ya. See you, Gav. What time is it now?
17:25.
What?
5 5:25?
5:25, alright. Tell him if I'm not there in 20, 35 minutes, just wait longer.
Alan's just headed off, so we're going to go watch him from top of Galway's Hill for the last kilometre. Then there's somewhere just eventually.
Carolina and Gavin were on the cliff trying to keep an eye on me, but it was impossible. More's a surfing beach, so it was just breaking wave over the head. Couldn't see the finish line, and I couldn't see anyone on the beach. This isn't sort of the finish I had planned. I kept on swimming closer until the pink hats became visible. The guys who'd signed up to join and swim with me actually had come down and stood on the shoreline since they couldn't come into the water. That definitely was an emotional moment, seeing that.
That moment where, you know, he came to that waist deep water, the electricity was just amazing. Like, no matter what he had felt earlier that day about how the weather might have ruined it, I think that was just completely washed away by the enormous support that just almost makes the hairs in the back of your neck stand.
Absolute roller coaster. I don't think I've experienced so many emotions in one day, from the start of the day thinking everything's perfect and we've made it, to the red flag going up and the safety kayakers pulling out. Finally seeing your family and embracing them and having that joyous moment on the end of the beach.
As soon as he got in the water at the start, I was confident that he was going to finish it. You know, it was just such an achievement and we're so proud of him.
Not only did Alan swim the length of Ireland, but Carolina paddled the length of Ireland. If you can spend 6 weeks at sea together, I think you can just about get through anything.
I think it would have been fairly impossible to get somebody, especially somebody that would stay the course of the challenge and somebody that would be able to support me as much as she did.
I think you have to just appreciate the enormity of the challenge he's undertaking, and to be a part of that is incredible. Spending that amount of time in those close quarters definitely bring you closer together, and that's part of the reason you want to go back and help him so much. Help him with his last and his next mad adventure as they come along.
I think that last week of the challenge and the final day really epitomised it all. Just cancer killing Dad and the relentless stormy sea of emotions just battering you day after day. At times it was a battle finding a way forward through the waves too. Just the fact that everything went so wrong on that first attempt, and then just getting those challenges right up to the finish line on the second attempt, it just made it more meaningful to overcome. Just a truer testimonial to the man that my dad was, and even the man that he raised me to be. I think he would have been proud.
The real last swim.
And just get going.
I want it over and done with quick.
Done, officially done now. Officially done. Thanks very much.